Welcome to the Octopod. I'm Kyle Davies, head of the Office of the CTO. Join us as we dive into the latest technologies and trends shaping business. Whether you're a tech enthusiast, a business leader, or just looking to stay ahead in the digital age, this podcast is for you. Let's unlock opportunities with technology together. Let's jump in. Welcome to the Octopod podcast. Today I'm joined by Joe Baguley from Broadcom. I'm going to be diving into what's been happening at VMware Explore. Now, Joe, do you want to just introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Technology Officer for EMEA here at Broadcom. I've been at the company, I was VMware before, for nearly 14 years now.
Oh, nice. Awesome. What does a CTO of EMEA do?
That's a good question. My kids would love to know that as well. So I'm a field CTO, that's the best way to describe that. I joined originally to be a field CTO. And my real role is connecting R&D in the field, is the best way to describe that. So I spend half of my time with R&D leadership, and obviously with the GMs and the people who are running R&D and understanding what they're doing. And then the other half of my time is spent with customers, and it's that comms channel. So it's how do I make sure that customers are getting the best and latest in terms of strategy and updates from our R&D, and at the same time, R&D is well informed. And then off that, I also drive programs like the CTAB, which is, a more formalized way of the Customer Technical Advisory Board, which is how we get into the next level down. So we get top people from our customers to meet our product managers, and then, there's various other things as well. So it's really, how do we make sure that strategy meets the market and the market meets our strategy?
Awesome. It's all very similar to what I get asked to do, and trying to bridge the gap between what customer demand and things we can provide them to overcome their business outcomes and challenges, right, that they might have.
Yeah, I find myself doing a lot of educating customers stuff they didn't realize they knew or didn't know or didn't have, especially when it comes to VCF.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to touch on that a bit later on, where we're going to get a bit of a review of if you're a VCF customer and you're consuming the platform. We can kind of dive into what kind of things they could do first, ultimately, to accelerate that journey. But before we get into that, it's probably worth kind of a high level covering off the last 9 months, right? Because it has been a bit of a change. There's been lots of press around the Broadcom acquisition and things. It'd be good to get your kind of view of what it's been like on the inside and the conversations you've been having with customers.
Yeah, well, it's 12 months since the acquisition.
Well, yeah, it is.
And then for 18 months before then, I was involved in the acquisition process. So it's actually been 2.5 years, really. Since the acquisition closed, which is just under 12 months ago, literally a couple of weeks, it's been a dramatic and exciting transformation internally, I think is the best way to describe that. If you think about how VMware was organized before and what we're doing now 12 months later, I think the one word I could use is focus more than anything else. So the simple way to think about it is before the acquisition, from an R&D perspective. So before the acquisition, we had several different business units for each of the kind of product lines. So there was a business unit for vSphere, there was a business unit for NSX, there was a business unit for vSAN kind of tied in, there was a business unit for our automation products, and so on and so on and so forth. Actually 9 at one point, and there was a group of VCF type people. And what would happen is you'd have each of those business units would kind of have their own roadmap at slightly different cadences, going in kind of the same direction, but not quite all the same direction. And then some people in the trying to join that all together and make it into the VMware Cloud Foundation. We were siloed, is the short answer. What happened overnight on the acquisition was those silos all went. We have one business unit called VCF. We have one roadmap, which is delivering VCF. So everything now to do with vSphere, vSAN, ESX, or NSX, etc., is all now about VCF. So that's flipped it on its head. We have no silos in R&D anymore. We're about delivering this private cloud platform. And no, what you don't do is you don't put everyone in the car park and say you're all out of a job and then rearrange them back into the new org. They come in to the org with their sort of original silos, but because they're all working to this combined roadmap, you'll find that very quickly those silos merge and people sort of work about that they're focused on one solitary goal. And so that's been the massive transformation, I think, really. And what you're seeing now with the announcements we made in Vegas and further announcements here in Barcelona is the result of that. You're seeing that clear focus on VMware Cloud Foundation and everything we're doing with it.
Yeah, I definitely see the focus and the strategy driving VCF, because if you're here at the event, VCF is everywhere, right? It's the only thing that everyone gets to see and hear. And I think from a lot of customers, they've been trying to make that decision between vSphere, VVF, whether it's then going to be VCF, whether they're going to do add-on services that were announced this week as an example. If you were a customer that was originally just using vSphere and you've been using that for years, you're really happy, and you've now procured VCF because that's the preferred approach, right? Realistically.
Yeah.
Where should they start? 'Cause I had this conversation with a customer in the expo hall yesterday where they've done pretty much that. They've renewed, they've got their VCF licenses, and they're now trying to think about their roadmap and strategy for consuming those services.
I think you have to start with what we call an FSA, which is a future state architecture. I think you've got to decide, and that is a derivative of your future operating model. So I think you've got to define an operating model for IT, or where you want the operating. And this is the conversation I'm having with CIOs every day, right? Which is, what's the operating model for IT going forwards? What services are you expected to deliver in IT, and who to, and which parts of the business, and what are they doing? From that, you can then derive a future state architecture for what it is going to support that operating model. And that future state architecture hopefully will be a beautiful diagram of VMware Cloud Foundation Private Cloud. But I think really that's the only way you get, rather than sort of how do I add bits onto where I am now and try and get there? It's kind of like, okay, let's look at what the dream would be. And at least you've then got an idea of where you're going to go to, rather than sit here and go, I've got vSphere, oh, let's add vSAN on, that'd be nice. And oh, I've got that working. Right, now let's put NSX in. And you'll find yourself, if you do that, you'll have frankly, some kind of accreted mess, as opposed to actually an architecture and go, well, I need this for that bit. And the same process, you'll be able to decide which pieces you don't need. Because, some customers are not going to use every part of VCF. But at the same time, going through that future state architecture process should help you understand all the stuff that is there. Because I think what a lot of people have, I consistently hear, I have conversations with people that have preconceptions about what is in VCF and what's not in VCF, or preconceptions about what a product is based on 4 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. So I think it's much more about spending some real quality time, which is what everyone's doing here right now, learning about all the stuff that's available in VCF and all the things you can do. And you'll be surprised, actually, there's some stuff that maybe you've been wanting to do for years, you now own and you can do. There's some stuff maybe you're paying another company for that you don't need to pay them for anymore because it's included in VCF, which is a great win if you can get it. But I think it's education. So my first step would be awareness of what's available so I can then start to draw that map out.
Yeah, and I think what we've been doing with customers is pretty much that. Where do you want to get to? What's it look like? What levels of agility? What kind of workloads do you have? Kind of that right workload, right platform-based conversation.
Yeah.
And then really then bunging it down to how much are you spending on other tooling? When are those renewals coming up? And how can you consolidate from a power of a platform conversation where it's relevant to do so? Because you've got a lot of skills in-house that's on Morpheus data, for example, for orchestration and automation. You might still want to keep that rather than change everyone's skill set potentially, right? So there's those kind of things to think of as well.
And it's important to point out, actually, that the VCF architecture allows for that choice. We're not prescriptive saying you have to have every piece. But, so if you do want to use something else or plug something else in, that's fine.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good thing, right, with regards to the ecosystem element that's been happening, where VMware have taken a much broader approach to the ecosystem attachments that are available into VCF. So we think about what organizations were doing previously, where they've just gone on vSphere and then done 3-tier architectures and everything else potentially. Now they have that flexibility and choice, right, to make that right decision, which is great. And if we think about one thing that's been announced this week, right, I know it's quite hard to boil everything down to one thing, right? So if we have one thing that if the listeners were going to take away from the announcements, what would that be?
So if we take VCF as read, the exciting thing for me, which I did in the Gen session, which you can watch online, was the advanced services piece that plugs under. And I think people finally realizing what that is. So if you take VMware Cloud Foundation as that, comprehensive private cloud platform, when people go to a public cloud, they expect there to be a series of services on there like databases and security, etc. That's what advanced services is. So advanced services is where people can come and say, actually, I really would like to put in place Tanzu Data Services, which we announced, which gives you, messaging with RabbitMQ. It gives you caching with, in-memory stuff with Valkey. It gives you, PostgreSQL and MySQL options that are all tailored, pre-tuned, integrated with VCF, so that people can just come and, like they would do for public cloud, and click and take those, or vDefense Security, or all those others. So I think that for me is probably the big news this week, or the realization, I suppose, that people are getting is this kind of understanding. You've got VMware Cloud Foundation, which does containers natively and contains Kubernetes and all the other wonderful things you need, but you're going to need things like Spring and other bits and pieces on top to meet this tune in for the application needs that you have. And I think that if you see it that way, as there's a series of these advanced services, it's something that becomes very clear.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with the advanced services piece for me, that is the most critical thing if we're going to think about a private cloud and having, whether that's a managed service provider providing that service, or whether you've got it in your own colo or own data centers, offering that modernized public cloud style of consumption is critical to accelerate that the return of investment in time to value that you can get.
And so there's an interesting point here about private cloud, right? Because I go to a lot of customers and say, oh, we've got a private cloud. And you go, really? Have you? Can I have a look at it? Oh, okay. That's not really what you think it is. What you're seeing there is for a lot of people, there's been this focus on going to public cloud. And for whatever reason, we're going to public cloud. So you walk into, here's a typical scenario. I walk into an enterprise and they go, oh yeah, we've been cloud first now for the last 5 years. And you're like, how's that gone? Wow, not that great. We didn't get as much over there as we thought we would. We're now, slowing that process down a bit. To your point, right workload, right place. We're now realizing actually, yes, we're going to have stuff on-prem and or, in our private cloud, wherever that is, colo, service provider, whatever it is. And then they're turning back around to look at their private cloud, which is the one that they called a private cloud 5 years ago, that because they've been focused on the public cloud for the last 5 years, they've not really done anything too. So it's been poorly maintained, but worse than that, it's grown because these things do grow anyway. And they come back to this thing and go, well, wow, okay. And I think it's the realization that now they need to professionalize that and focus back on that and put time, effort, and money, unfortunately, into making that a proper, comprehensive private cloud with the appropriate services that will stand up against public cloud. Because in its current state, it's going to be more expensive, more clunky, probably not as great as people going to public cloud, but you need it to be. In fact, you need it to be better than that.
Yeah, even more so for sovereign cloud requirements, especially in Europe and things as well, right? And on that point, so me and Rob ran a session actually this week at Explore around the fear of missing out around AI. And we had some questions in there around, well, who's doing AI today? And everyone in the room were like, yes, hands went up. And then we said, okay, leave your hands up. If it's not Copilot, right, and it's more custom models, custom training, whatever it might be, every single hand apart from one in the room went down. So there isn't a fear of missing out other than people are afraid of people saying they're doing AI when they're maybe not. The other question we asked was, how many people have repatriated or planning to repatriate from the public cloud? And we were really surprised. There's only like 3 or 4 hands that went up in a room of, say, 80 to 100 people.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I thought, well, there isn't a question on this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How many of you are actually in the public cloud?
Yeah. 6
hands.
Correct.
Went up. And I was like, okay, let me just see if one of the room's listening now. How many of you are just running purely on-prem? Everyone's hands went up. So I think we're like, okay, so that's the state of the nation.
So there is that. There's this element. Everyone feels like everyone's in the public cloud doing stuff, but the reality that I'm living in, the people I'm going to talk to, are exactly what you're saying.
Exactly that. And I think the other thing that we saw actually, this was on the VMware LinkedIn poll that you had running with regards to how many times have people been to Explore or VMworld in the past.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting to see. I know it's only a proportion of the attendees, but 63% is their first time attending.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I saw that poll. My vote was obviously the bottom one because I've been to 147 of them. But yeah, I was quite pleasantly surprised by that. And it's interesting because I was just with a customer right now, and in fact, a customer based in Barcelona, and this is the first ever Explore / VMware they've been to, and you're like, hang on, it's in Barcelona for the last 10 years, and you didn't go. And he sat there going, it's so amazing. I've learned so much. There's so much cool stuff going on, and you're like, okay, so yeah.
Well, we do take it for granted, right, when we get to come to these fairly regularly.
You do. You take it for granted, and you forget that for over 50% of the people, it's their first time here, and it's exciting for them and different. And yeah, I think you've got to keep that. And I think if you're out there, there is a buzz, there is an excitement. I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but there really is actually.
Yeah, I think from conversations I've been having with the customers that we've got here is that they're really looking into how do they leverage and take advantage of the VCF portfolio and the enhanced digital services that are now available. That's the kind of thing they're now talking about, whereas previously they were probably thinking, can I move away potentially?
Well, if you think back 12 months, right, you had a lot of FUD in the marketplace. There literally was a lot of people being very unsure about what's going to happen. And, I'm not even going to go into list those, but yeah, it doesn't go without saying. Fast forward to today, and you've got a bunch of people here, and they're going, oh no, it makes sense, it's clear. There's a focus, I understand what's going on, and I'm down with that, and that's where I want to be. And yeah, that's literally it, and it's refreshing.
It definitely is. And then the final thing for me really is one of the first things that you mentioned on stage this week was the value of community.
Yeah.
It'd be good to kind of dive into that a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, let me tell you about that. So it's an interesting one for me. So my IT career is varied and very long. But in the mid-90s, I was a consultant at a company consulting on NetWare and Microsoft, and just to date some of the things. And I remember I went to Tech Ed, and that was like like if you were one of the 3 people at the consulting company that got to go to Tech Ed, it was like you were the best, right? You know, you're also one of the people allowed to carry around the MSDN CDs as well, which made you really special, right? But I went to Tech Ed, and it just, for someone who spent their whole life, literally just in an office working on technology, to suddenly go to this conference, see all these people, see this amazing thing. But what struck home to me was I was most excited that I'd got to meet the Exchange product manager. And I was like, oh my God, I met the product manager for Exchange. I feel really special now because I met the product manager for Exchange. And I literally did. I got a buzz out of that. And I never forgot that. And I never forgot how once I went to that, I felt like I was part of something. I felt like I was part of something bigger. I connected to people from other companies. But I felt connected to the supplier. I felt connected to Microsoft, and I say because I met the Exchange product manager, I felt like I was the coolest guy in the world. So go forward a few years in my career, and I suddenly am that guy. I suddenly remembered how important it is to do that. I suddenly remember. I remembered how important it was to carry on that connection with the community. So at Quest Software, where I was for 10 years before I was here, it was very much about how do we maintain and keep the community and do that. And one of the communities I got involved in around our product line at VMware was the vMugs, because obviously we were doing vFogLite and other things as well, and the VDI stuff too. So it was a no-brainer the minute I joined VMware as the CTO. It was, well, of course, my priority has to be vMugs, because that's the community. That's what, is important to this and important to our success and important to everyone's success, to feel supported and included. And I think, bear in mind, when I was doing this was pre-internet, really. If you think about when I first started the communities, literally, the concept of downloading stuff off the internet was weird, in 95, 96, to now where you get these connected communities. But I still think this getting together physically for something like VMUG and hanging out and just being able to chat to someone and let's talk peer-to-peer as a community member, just be able to find someone who's got the same problem as you is really important. But then for me, if I'm not careful, I could spend my entire time talking to the CIOs of our largest customers and the CTOs of our largest customers, and I get up with the view that's very skewed of a marketplace. Whereas if I go to VMUG, yes, some of those CTOs of large companies are still there, but equally, I have a guy walk up to me that runs 5 servers for his school, with vSphere on them. And that's just as exciting and important to me to hear about their challenges and their needs and wants as it is everything else. So it's about keeping that breadth of understanding. So yeah, from a personal perspective, from being a senior exec at a software company, the community is very important to me to keep me and the rest of the team here connected and grounded. But I think it's also really important for those people out there to feel that you're not alone in doing this stuff. And when you come to something like this and see 6,000 odd people all the same as you trying to do the same thing, it's kind of cool.
It is, yeah. And I think I was at one of my community sessions talking to some people the other day, and one of the things they were most excited about signing up to VMware Advantage was the exam discounts and then also the free licenses, right?
Yeah, I've been working myself and a few others. I worked very hard on that to get the fact that if you sign up to VMware Advantage, if you actually have to pass the VCF VCP, but you get 50% off that anyway. And in fact, if you work for many companies, you'll get that free. So do that. You then get the ability to get free VCF licenses for personal use, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've been a vExpert now for 9-ish years, and we were saying when VCF started to say, can we get more of these licenses? And it was always that kind of thing, well, how we get that in a cost-effective way from your perspective, right, to the hands of the community to play around, break it, and do some cool stuff with it.
But, and that was the point that I made very early on after the acquisition, was that it's really important that we get software into the hands of practitioners. I mean, like I say, I'm not expecting, it's not like someone from a big bank's going to go and get the free copy of VCF and run their production banking systems on it. It doesn't happen, right? People like me, and I really do, sit there in a home lab with some Synology stuff and some Super Micro stuff and some other weird stuff and bolt things together and plug some drives in and play with stuff. That's what you like doing. That's how I learn and break, and everyone does that. And that's how we develop and grow. And I've always tinkered in that way, and I think we always should do.
Yeah, and I think my house is warmed through servers and equipment, so it's kind of the way that things are done and were done in the past, right, rather than just using public cloud for things. But I think we can end it there. It's been great to have a chat with you, Joe, and thank you very much for your time.
Brilliant. It's been good to have on.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure to check out the back catalogue for more great insights. Don't forget to subscribe via your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. And if you have a topic you want us to cover, feel free to reach out. Catch you next time.